So welcome to our public meeting for the flood mapping and green infrastructure planning climate social. Hopefully you guys all had a chance to get some food, be social. Still some swag back there, so make sure you get all your stamps. Interpretation, hopefully you found your interpreter that lets you enjoy the meeting most comfortably here in the room. Meeting agenda. We will start off with a welcome from Max and then dive a little deeper on this project that you've probably already heard a little bit about. To our participants on Zoom, you can communicate with us through the chat tab. We will be keeping an eye on that, and you can also use the raise hand function to let us know if you would like to ask a question live. And with that, I will hand it back to Max Rome, City of Boston Director of Green Infrastructure.
Thank you, Julie. Okay, get to start with my favorite question. What is stormwater? And stormwater, it's not rain, but it's what happens when rain falls on an impervious surface and runs off, and instead of soaking into the ground, it enters, it accumulates stuff off of the street and finds its way to our water bodies.
Sorry.
We're gonna,
People
okay.
in the waiting room.
Oh, gotta get the people in.
Sorry. Tara, stop my computer. Sorry, you can still chat.
We
Sorry,
gotta
guys.
enjoy the hybrid meeting format, so wonderful.
Okay. Okay, sorry. If you wanna keep going, I'll just do this.
Yeah, you click us back into there.
Oh, this one?
With the next one. One more.
This one?
Thank you, Dira. Okay, so I'd like to just start kind of zoomed out a little bit. This is Boston Harbor in 1776. This is Boston today. And I think the story that we hear a lot is about how Boston is a city that was built on fill. This is a city that was built into tidelands. It was built into the harbor. The Charles River was an estuary. Now it's back bay. But I think there's another really important piece of this story, which is that not only did we fill into the harbor and the estuary, we also filled the brooks and the streams that drain to the harbor and the estuary. And there's another thing that happened, between 1776 and 2023, we built a lot of stuff on this city. So the city of Boston right now is 56% impervious surfaces. So that means 27 square miles of the city of Boston are roofs, roadways, sidewalks, and when the water hits those surfaces, it's really not rain that creates stormwater, it's impervious surfaces that create stormwater. So in 1776, that 1-inch rainfall happens, some of it soaks into the ground, some of it gets into the brook, some of it gets soaked up in some wetlands. The rivers surge a little bit, they find their way out into the harbor. Today, that water that's falling on impervious surfaces, making its way into over 30,000 catch basins that BWSC manages. From those 30,000 catch basins, it finds its way into over 670 miles of stormwater drainage pipe, and then out into the river, out into wetlands, out into the harbor through, over 240 different stormwater outfalls. Next slide. Thank you so much. So what does this mean for us? It means a lot of different things, but stormwater all of a sudden is a challenge. I think some of you guys look pretty smart in this room, so you maybe wouldn't be surprised by this. But stormwater is the #1 pollutant for our aquatic environment. It's pollution that comes from stormwater, comes from runoff. That's the reason we can't swim in the Charles River all summer long. It's the reason that eelgrass is having a hard time growing in Boston Harbor. So water quality is a stormwater issue. Water quality is a kind of impervious area issue, but it's not just water quality, it's also water quantity. And this is, this is in some ways kind of obvious, but I think in Boston, we spend a lot of time thinking about the flooding threat from sea level rise, but climate change is bringing more intense storms, and those intense storms are creating inland flooding that we're already experiencing. And that is what this project is all about. Next slide. So green infrastructure, I'm the director of green infrastructure here at the city. What is green infrastructure? Green infrastructure is a series of techniques to change the way water runs through the built environment. What we know is that if we can catch that first inch of rain that falls on the ground and retain it, get it into the soil instead of into our storm drains, we're gonna have a built environment that looks a lot more like that 1776 map. Not a place where there's no flooding, but a place where the amount of pollution coming from the city is in balance with the river and the estuaries, and where we will be really resilient to the kind of extreme flooding that we're expecting in the future. Green infrastructure can look like a lot of different things. We often focus on rain gardens, kind of small systems that can be fit into the city street or can be retrofit from a parking lot. Soak up that rain, get it into the ground, use natural systems to try and do this efficiently and cheaply in a way that makes our city more beautiful. Did I lose this microphone?
Yeah.
I may have just pressed the power button myself. Is that back on? Yes, it is. Okay. So expected stormwater impacts. From Boston Water and Sewer Commission, we know we have some good ideas about where flooding is going to be happening in the future. But as you all know in this room, and if you've been walking around the room and talking to folks, we are already experiencing flooding in the city. So what we're doing with this project and at the City of Boston is to me kind of cool, kind of exciting. We're doing two different parallel programs. One is, using the latest and greatest kind of high-tech strategies.
You hit it again.
High-tech strategies. I'm gonna face it this way. So I can't touch it with my finger. It might not be me. Yeah, I'm just gonna speak loudly. But so on the one hand, where there's an effort to develop an inundation model that really understands how water's flowing through the city, where it's likely to build up. But what this project is about is actually just kind of crowdsourcing this data and asking citizens and residents in Boston, where are you experiencing flooding right now? So this is a project that's funded through the Massachusetts Vulnerability Preparedness Program. So in this state, we're really, really lucky to have an incredible infrastructure for funding studies and planning that gets us ready for climate change. And this is a project that was funded for 2 years through that program. This is a little bit about the project. We collected all of the publicly available data on flooding. Then we got out into the community and asked people to report additional sites. All of that is going into a data display that we're gonna kind of show you a little bit today. And then finally, what we're trying to do with this information is identify projects that can have immediate impact, that can address flooding where we're already experiencing it, but also identify larger projects that can make a big difference related to hotspot flooding that we're already experiencing. So a little bit about the project team. This is a project that's led by the City of Boston, but it's a really huge effort. I'm not gonna read every name on this slide, but this is work that we can't do on our own. We have a wonderful consultant team from Weston and Sampson. We have a bunch of nonprofit partners, and then really we're relying on the public to tell us what they're seeing. And with that, I'm gonna hand it back over to Julie Wood to talk a little bit about crowdsourcing this flood data.
Excellent. Thank you, Max. Hello again. So as Max set up, we've been collecting data about where flooding is actually impacting people through this project. Where is it impacting your daily life? Where is it impacting your commute? So we wanted to bring some of that data back to the group tonight. We're seeing different types of flooding because flooding can mean different things to different people. You know, essentially this is flooding. A large puddle is essentially flooding. Obviously this kind of flooding is what we see a lot of on the news, the king tide, waterfront flooding. But this kind of flooding can be really impactful if this is where you're trying to go and it's a little bit deeper than that. So we're very thankful to all the folks that have put in data reports so far. Our ask to you tonight is to please, the next time it's raining, think about putting in a flood report. You can go back there, scan the QR code, just save that tab on your phone, please. The best thing to do is take a picture. If you don't know all the answers to the questions, no problem. If you can get a picture in, it's super helpful to our team and to the city to understand where flooding is happening and what folks are seeing. Why crowdsource flood impacts? We get real-time reports from all over the city. Not something the city could do on our own, not even something us community-based organizations could do on our own. Access to local and historical knowledge. You know, maybe you guys know these are the spots that flood all the time. Next time it rains, I'm gonna go out and snap a photo there. Citywide data collection through the power of numbers and resident engagement, and then we also get to talk flooding with folks, something that is probably impacted almost everyone in this room to one degree or another. So a very personal experience, and we get to engage folks in it. The survey is available in 7 languages. We're really trying to be broad and far-reaching with this data collection effort, so please share it within your communities as well. What have we seen so far? Close to 200 survey responses. I'm sure after tonight we'll be at 200 next time it rains. Reporting data back from a little over a year, basically a little over 12 months of data is what we've had. And what are folks seeing? What are folks telling us? Longer drive or walk times, inaccessible destination, and in some cases property damage. Just a few photos, a few more photos of what has been submitted. You know, some of these really clearly hazardous and warning. Others, you know, maybe you would not necessarily want to drive through. General summary of observations. As you go through the survey, you'll see there's a bunch of different questions that we're asking. Like I said, if you just can send in a photo, we're happy to have it. But what are we seeing? The most common depth of flooding observed in those close to 200 reports is just a few inches. So a lot of these are minor, you know, not super severe reports. 3% though did note a foot or deeper flooding, so that's pretty deep flooding. Most common flooding impact observed are driving or transportation time and routes. So it is preventing folks from getting where they need to be or making folks late. Most of the flooding observed is standing water as opposed to running water, which makes sense. And then most of the flooding is observed after rainfall events. And that is a key piece of the data we're trying to capture. Where is rainfall and precipitation causing flooding versus the coastal and tidal impacts? And now I will hand it back to Max to do a bit of a deeper dive on green infrastructure.
So whenever I get the opportunity to talk to people, I like to talk about green infrastructure. That's what our office does. We wanna kind of get the word out about what this looks like in the city of Boston. This is a project that we did with the Boston Housing Authority in Franklin Field. And green infrastructure can be complicated. It can have engineered soils, under drains, drainage structures, but it can, you know, at its simplest, it's about digging a hole and putting plants in it and making sure that that hole is connected to impervious surfaces so that water can get in there. One project that I think is really important to highlight is this New England Ave project. And this is, it's a simple project, but it's a project that we know has had a real impact locally on flood experience and also kind of the experience of the sidewalk. So, what we're looking to do is strategically cite the right sized projects that can make this city greener, that can deal with some of the pollution that's coming off of roadways and impervious areas, and can mitigate the flooding, the ponding that we're already seeing on our road network. Here's another example of a bioswale or a rain garden that's really kind of integrated into the landscape. So these are projects that belong kind of throughout the city in a lot of different contexts. And we've got folks here from Nubian Square tonight, so this is a project that we're very proud of. But for this work, our goal is identifying new potential GI locations across the city. So something that we want to do is equitably bring this work to all of the neighborhoods in the city. And the Office of Green Infrastructure is really trying to build a pipeline of high priority projects that we can fund and get in the ground over the next couple of years. So we looked at 3 really high priority areas in each of the watersheds in the city where there's the most acute hotspot flooding. This includes East Boston. It includes Mattapan, and it includes Com Ave in Brighton. So these are all sites now where we are working internally in the city to understand what are the other major projects that are going to be happening and how can we integrate flood resilient green infrastructure into upcoming major streets projects, so that when we're rebuilding Com Ave, you don't just get a nice street, but you're also getting something that's dealing with the current climate and future flooding and is resilient. So I'm going to hand this over to Carrie. Sure. To talk a little bit about our data page.
Yes. Hi, I'm Carrie Snyder. I'm the Managing Director for Community Resilience at the Neponset River Watershed Association. And all of this great work is available for you to take a look at. So I've got a QR code here. This is based off of Max's office website. And it's got a ton of information. So to find out more about the project itself, you can look at the project overview and the purpose. You can also see community data. So you can see the areas that people have identified as having flooding. So you see the different points that have had the most reports. So these are the hot spots. And you can also see those proposed green infrastructure sites. So you can take a look at sort of the concepts and what green infrastructure might look like in those locations and others throughout the city. So please visit it. Use this. Get excited and submit your survey. And I just wanted to put in a plug. We've got a lot of precipitation out here right now, so we're not just looking for rainwater, but when this stuff melts, definitely tell us where there's flooding. So. All right, I'm handing it back to Matt.
That's wonderful. Yeah, thanks so much. So stay involved. We'd love your help in this room getting the word out to the community. We need people to be tracking this issue, and then we need people to be tracking these projects as they get into the ground. They need support to happen. If folks have a second, break out your telephone and scan these QR codes, because another thing that we are trying to do right now is kind of understand, how do people understand green infrastructure in the city? Is it something they want to see more of? Is it something they want to, see larger systems, smaller systems? Are there specific concerns about maintenance, trash accumulation. We are trying to gather this data so that we can do better planning. Finally, this is the flood survey. Okay, and then this is the flood survey. So, if you haven't grabbed this picture, save it to your phone, then you can find this when you're out and about, seeing some puddles, seeing some flooding.
We also have tiny QR codes available at the flood survey table that you can put in your wallet so you can have access to it whenever you want.
Yeah. All right, well, thank you so much. And we'd be happy to take some questions or comments if anybody has some. We've got a lot of great people in the room.
Maybe we can take them from each.
Oh, yeah.
So I just wanted to ask, so you brought up the green infrastructure implemented at Nubian Square, and it's very wonderful, very, very wonderful to look at. I live 10 minutes down the street from it, so I've walked by it a lot. But I did want to ask if there was any talk about putting in an effort to educate people more about it, because until you just mentioned it now, even as someone who's lived in that area for years, I hadn't realized this was green infrastructure. So is there talk about maybe putting up a sign to communicate to people like what this is, what its purpose is, or anything of the sort?
I'm looking for my guy Ronak in the back, but it's so helpful to hear that from you. And okay, so the question for folks on Zoom was, hey, I didn't even know that these planters in Nubian Square were green infrastructure, or what they were doing. How can the city do a better job? What is the city planning to do to get the word out more effectively? And we think signage is a great idea. We also have something called the Green Infrastructure Volunteer Program. So we're trying to work with local champions who can care for these gardens and also get the word out to their neighbors. But thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, of course.
I'm gonna bring a try tonight, hopefully it won't go out, but just so it'll sound loud.
The examples that I think we've seen tonight have mostly been on public infrastructure. Are there opportunities to encourage and incentivize private developers to incorporate green infrastructure in their projects?
What a good question. So the question was, we've seen some examples of green infrastructure in the right of way and on public projects. What about private development? And so happy to answer that question because there's a great answer to it. In the state of Massachusetts, any private development that disturbs more than 1 acre of land has to meet certain stormwater standards. In the city of Boston, and I'm looking at my colleague Emma Page from BWSC, so tell me if I get this wrong, but I think I got it. In the city of Boston, almost any project that changes its piped connection to city infrastructure is required to meet a 1-inch retention standard. So they're required to soak up that first inch of water, which is really, really good. And there are hundreds and hundreds of projects that have been caught through this site plan review process. And then even beyond that, in Boston, we've got this crazy Article 80 process for larger projects. Those projects are required to do 1.25 inches. So maybe that's enough of an answer for you, but there's so many different pieces of the puzzle that we've got to fit together to solve this problem. That's a huge one. And then the Office of Green Infrastructure is in Boston's Public Works Department, or the Streets Cabinet. So we're very focused on what can we do within the right of way where we own the streets, basically.
Are there any plans in the pipeline to collaborate with BPS so that we can encourage the youth and the next generation to get involved in this work? Because we volunteer and we collect teams, but we want to see more of the youth get involved and participate through BPS.
So the question was, what about working with BPS? Can we get the youth involved? And you guys are just hitting like every single thing that I would ever want to talk about. So we are, we're working really hard to to build or to strengthen our partnership with Boston Public Schools. And I'll say that in the early days, actually, before the Office of Green Infrastructure, kind of as the city was dipping its toes into this, Boston Water and Sewer Commission did 5 big projects at the Boston Public Schools. And we maintain those projects to this day. A lot of them look really good. Some of them need a little bit of work every year. And we are in very active conversation with BPS about how to do more. And their issue is maintenance. They're really having a hard time taking on anything new because they need a maintenance assurance from us. So literally today, that's the conversation that we're having with them.
Can we take one from the online?
Yes, go with the online.
Question was, Question from online was for Boston Water and Sewer Commission, maybe Mexican also answer, but are there any plans for increasing the sizing standards for stormwater management systems, such as new projects looking forward to account for the increased precipitation volumes and greater intensities expected under the latest rainfall models?
Unfortunately, I do not know the answer to that question. I'm very sorry.
Okay, I can tell you what John told me. So this is a question that's like, hey, bigger storms are happening. Do we need bigger pipes in our city? And what's been represented to me is that in general, the pipes are actually pretty big. What can be more challenging is getting water into the pipes. So, making sure that the catch basins have the capacity that they need, and everybody in this room kind of has a role to play in making sure there's not a lot of sticks over the catch basins. But this is something, I think that's an active topic of discussion, and it feels like the strategy is going to be, how can we find retention upstream of the catch basins? How can we deal with that increase in precipitation before it gets into the pipe network? Because it'd be one thing to dig up the whole city and build bigger pipes, but if we can do this through green infrastructure, do this through the development of new projects, that would be preferable.
So you've spoken to tonight about, and we've seen all the residential surveys. Can you talk a little bit more, and this is a question for Matt specifically, about how you're engaging students and commuters?
Wow, so the question was, how are we engaging students and commuters? And are you thinking about not Boston Public School students, but
More specifically about college students.
I don't know if we're doing a good job engaging college students or commuters. Okay. Yeah, sometimes college students find their ways to us because they're interested in stormwater, and we try and be very responsive to nice emails that we get from people who are doing projects. But do you have any ideas? Is there something that's occurring to you, a need that you see?
I don't know, because I go to school here, but I also lived in Watertown
Okay.
my whole life, so, and I work at community voting, very involved over there.
So you're a ringer. You're a water person.
Yep, I've been submerged in the Charles more than most.
And I can't resist saying that Watertown has really amazing stormwater standards for large projects, where they require any big project over 5,000 square feet to retain the 100-year storm on its property. So, yeah.
I was at that meeting too.
Okay. We've got a champion over here, yeah.
Maybe one more question, is there any more online?
Not right now, no. One more, I think we're good.
The question related to maintenance. So I noticed that in a lot of the green infrastructure, you have organics or plant-based material. So how important is that? Because I presume over the winter, a lot of those die off. So do you need to replant before you get the full utility of the infrastructure, or is it the soil that matters?
Yeah, maintenance is a huge deal. And the goal is to not have to replant every year. So the goal is to do a good job establishing the plants, establishing perennials, small shrubs that are gonna naturalize and be healthy for a long time. But the reality is that, I'm just gonna shout out my colleague Ronak in the back if you wanna talk more about this, he's your man. But what I'll say is that, you know, what we do in the Office of Green Infrastructure right now is that we have a maintenance contract. And, do you wanna come describe?
You said it pretty much everything, it's, the goal is to not have to replant, but the reality is we do sometimes have to replant. Our contractor does a really good job of making sure that happens right after, you know, post-winter, they're out there every 2 weeks, they're visiting every site, making sure all sites are planted, they have enough soil mulch, that they're, you know, actually functioning well. So plant selection goes a long way, but also making sure that as we're infiltrating water, the soil that we're using, like the bioretention soil mixture, that everything goes hand in hand to make sure that those plants are gonna be, you know, coming back after the snow melts. So during winter, we, other than kind of like major snowstorms, there's, you know, we're kind of hunkering down, not doing too much maintenance, but we are kind of making sure that when this snow starts melting, that we are in good shape to get those plants back up, that the facility's functioning well as soon as possible so that we can prep for all that snow melt.
One more question.
I just want to ask a question. So when you're doing these nature-based solutions, one of the big challenges that we're dealing with is invasive plants overall in our ecology. So as you're doing these, are you, if there are invasive plants, are you pulling them out and replacing them with natives that are?
Yeah, and that's actually a big piece of the planting work. So the contractor that we work with has mass certified horticulturalists on staff. And the goal is to put in a suite of native plants like, you know, goldenrod that are really, you know, grow aggressively and can kind of keep some of those plants out. But yeah.
One last thought. Last thought. To visit Nubian Square, in Nubian Square, we have an issue with sharps.
Yeah.
We'll often find as our volunteers go along. Is there something in the pipeline to put sharps bins, just to encourage some of our substance abusive community to direct their sharps in the bins and not throw them in the water? Is there something else?
I can take this one. Yeah, it's something that I've looked into with Nubian Square, with Peabody Square.
Can you restate the question?
Yeah, the question was about, so some of the volunteers at the Nubian Square site have found needles. What are we doing to ensure that we're, one, protecting the volunteers and making sure those needles aren't just, you know, in the soil where the volunteers are working or our contractors are working, but also to beautify the spot, having maybe a disposal for needles, what we can do better for that. And there's a couple sites that I'm looking at right now for what we could do to address that. It's really early on, so I am glad you brought that up, and I'm happy to talk more one-on-one to see what we could do. But Nubian Square, Peabody Square are two sites that I've outlined that we do need to do something about this, especially if we want to make sure that our volunteers are engaged and they don't lose interest. So there's nothing in the works, but I am glad you brought that up, and it's something that I would like to do.
Okay, we got one more. Can't cut people off.
Why did you choose Nubian Square?
He brought it up, Nubian Square in particular. I'm assuming you're very familiar with the site. It's nothing against the site, it's just what we've observed.
Is it the site, is it the library site in front of the library?
Yes, yeah, right in front of the library, yes.
Okay.
All right, well then I'm just gonna, before we get any more amazing questions, just gonna say thank you all so much for coming. Thank you for paying attention to this. Thanks for the great questions. And it's not too late to finish your bingo. Get those tote bags.
Bingo goes till 8 o'clock, so make your.
Yeah. That's not on my idea.